Hi, I hope you are enjoying this series on the Mother of Peace, the life story of Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon. You know, in preparation, I spend a huge amount of time rereading each portion of the book, and each time I read it, I see something new. I feel something new. Today's episode brings us to the end of chapter 2, which is titled, I Came into this world as the Only Begotten Daughter. You know, we've examined how special that fact is, that God's only begotten daughter is born. This precious daughter who, for the first time in human history, was able to truly represent the feminine aspect of God's heart. It's even more incredible that we are alive at the time to witness it. Incredible. You know, I'm not sure exactly how that translates into other languages, but the English word incredible is of Latin origin. It literally means not credible, meaning not believable, right? How is it then that something that is not believable becomes incredible? You know, if we think about the psychology of this, it's no surprise that the most amazing things are often misunderstood and not trusted at first. Words such as amaze, perplex, or astound are all synonymous with the feeling of shock. You know, words such as absurd, implausible, inconceivable, all these words describe your natural reaction to an experience with something you didn't know or expect. Something out of the norm. Well, in the normal world that we live in, with a rich history tainted with bloodshed and suffering, the idea of a woman being born to bring humanity back to our true relationship with God is definitely not normal. It is both unusual and improbable. You know, from her earliest years, she prepared to offer her entire life to eradicate the suffering of humanity. Perhaps many have dreamed of a world of peace, but who has effectively applied their entire life to it in such an undeniable way? While millions around the world have begun to understand who the Mother of Peace is, there are still billions who have yet to discover her, or perhaps believe her. That is why we take the time to reflect on her life, because it is a masterpiece. God speaks to you through these words. It is life-giving, transformational. So you should share it. You know, in chapter 2, we've briefly covered the preparation of the Korean people, the background of her lineage. We've witnessed the incredible journey of these 3 holy women. You know, think about it. You could call them the mother, the great mother, and grandmother of peace, right? Working together in attendance to heaven. Each of them were challenged with different stages of the providence. Grandmother Jo was working to liberate her country and regain its sovereignty while carrying her daughter on her back. Great Mother Hong Sune was desperately searching for the Lord of the Second Advent while carrying her daughter on her back. And our true mother was preparing to meet and marry the Lord of the Second Advent and save the world while carrying us on her back. How they survived and fulfilled their responsibilities is outstanding. Okay, so we are now at the point in the story. After narrow escapes from the clutches of Satan, they have found safety and a degree of stability in the south. Great Mother Hong, True Mother's mother, is turning her full attention back to her search for the Lord. At the same time, she's raising and protecting her precious daughter. At this point, she is still totally unaware that it is her daughter who is destined to marry the man she is searching for. She's on this path as an absolute devotee of heaven. And through all of her years of prayer and study and devotion, Great Mother Hong knows that God is unveiling a new dispensation in the land of Korea. Despite the unbelievability of it, despite the unlikeliness of it, she knows that Jesus has returned within the embodiment of the Son of Man to this land of Korea, the land where the descendants of heaven are born. Her mission is to find him. The title of today's message is In Search of the Lord of the Second Advent. All right, let's dive in. By God's hand, on our way to Daegu, we met Jung Sok-chun, a member of the Holy Lord Church to which my family had belonged in Cheolsan. He was very pleased to see us, and we all felt as if we were meeting long-lost relatives. The Holy Lord Church was the church in which my parents were married, and Jung Sok-chun's mother, Kim Song-do, was its founder. She was one of many female church leaders in the northern part of Korea, whose devotion to Jesus was unparalleled and who had received revelations of what was to come. By this time, the Holy Lord Church had disbanded because of Japanese persecution and suppression from the Communist Party. But this man, Jung Sok-chun, managed to escape to the south and continued to worship God. When we study the life of true parents, a key point is about the preparation of Christianity. While it is true that mainstream Christianity did not support the work of Reverend Moon, I believe it is important to recognize that there were, in fact, threads of Christianity that survived to fulfill its responsibility. And you will see that right here in the relationship with Mr. Jung. My mother made a simple request of him. When we were in the North Korea, she said, we received much grace through Mrs. Ho Ho Bin, and there were great works. Mr. Jung knew of Reverend Ho, whose congregation had prepared food and clothes for Jesus, as well as for the second coming Lord. As the Lord will return to Korea soon, my mother said to Mr. Jung, please let us pray very hard to welcome him. She mobilized him to redouble their efforts in preparation for the Lord. It was like reigniting the internal fires that were blown away by the oppression in the North. Even though the Spirit-led Christian churches in the North were largely disbanded, their foundation was not entirely lost. It was because of their deep devotion that heaven was able to reveal secrets to them that were hidden to others. Jesus and the Holy Spirit were working through all of this. Despite the lack of support from the establishment, despite the wars, and despite the Japanese and communist oppression, Father and Mother Moon would eventually find one another. The prayers of the faithful would be answered. And now, here in the South, True Mother's family remained connected to that root through their relationship with this man, Mr. Jung. And it is through this relationship that heaven would continue to work. He arranged accommodations for Mother's family and created a prayer group right there in Daegu. This is now where Great Mother Hong offered all of her devotions. One morning, during the Daegu group's intense prayer, my mother received a revelation from heaven. God told her that she had to live a life of greater devotion if she wanted to meet the Lord of the Second Advent. Prayer is not enough, she was told. You have to eat your food uncooked. So she began a rigorous diet of kimchi broth and raw pine needles and poured all of her efforts into preparing to meet the Lord. At the same time, she opened a small shop to raise funds to send her daughter to school. Undernourished and overworked, her devout Christian life and devotion was remarkable. A normal person would have eased off that discipline, but for my mother, her mind only became clearer. When I saw her serene countenance, while feeling sympathy for her, I could not help but be amazed. How can she run a business while consuming so little? I asked myself. It's nothing less than a miracle. No matter her plight, my mother surrendered her mind to her search for Jesus at his return. She was searching for the Lord while raising her child as the daughter of God. At this time, our young mother of peace was maturing into a beautiful girl. She was popular among her friends as well as adults. Naturally, God wanted to make sure his daughter was protected and guided her towards her ultimate mission. One afternoon, I was playing alone on the narrow street in front of the shop with my mother inside. A Buddhist monk walked by and I caught his eye, and he stopped. I returned his gaze, and I remember his piercing eyes. So she's standing there staring at this monk when her mother comes out. Pointing to me, he asked, "Is she your daughter?" Hearing her affirmative answer, his eyes turned warm and deep. As I turned to look at my mother, the holy man spoke. "You live with only one daughter, but don't envy someone who has 10 sons. Please raise her well. This daughter of yours is going to be married at a young age. Her future husband may be older than she is, but he'll be a great man with outstanding ability that transcends the sea, the land, and the skies." My mother took the ascetic's words seriously. By 1954, in search of a better environment away from the busy city streets of Daegu, Mother Hong moved the family to Jeju. They stayed with the younger brother of Mr. Jong. So again, you can see that the relationship of support from the Jong family was tight-knit. And it's like God used this time for special training for our true mother. On Jeju, as she had everywhere, my mother led me on the path of sainthood for the Lord, with no thought of worldly matters. And this fit my emerging personality very well. I read biographies of holy women and devoted myself to the ideal of complete purity in preparation to receiving my calling as the daughter of God. At the age of 11, while my classmates were running around and playing, I lived a rigorous and strict life of faith. These 3 holy women continued to devote themselves to prayer, study, and worship. And even though her mother was weak and undernourished, she was always ready to help others. Watching her must have had a huge impact on True Mother's sense of service and sacrifice. Her mother was her role model. Listen. If she saw someone having difficulty carrying a load, she would volunteer to carry it for them. Without her saying a word, people were filled with admiration. "I've never met such a thoughtful person," one village woman would say to another, who would respond, "That's what I'm saying. I heard she's a regular churchgoer, but still, she's so different from the others." Her standards were unparalleled, and she was raising her daughter in that type of an environment. My mother lived the exemplary life of an authentically religious person, always putting her faith into practice by helping others. She studied the Bible and shared with me the teachings of the Holy Lord Church and the Inside the Womb Church that Jesus would return as a man in the flesh, just as he had come 2,000 years ago, that he would find his holy bride and hold the marriage supper of the Lamb, as the Bible prophesies, and that all this would take place in Korea. From her, I learned the meaning of Jesus' second advent and could imagine it and taste it and touch it. And from my mother, I learned the meaning of true discipleship. I learned the meaning of true discipleship. I truly believe that these were formative months for True Mother. You can see that she was personally inheriting the quest in search of the Lord. At this point, neither of them had any idea that it would be her that would marry him. Even though they sensed that she would have a great mission, no, their devotion was completely selfless. But I believe that from around this time, this young, precious girl began to have personal experiences that prepared her not only to be a true daughter, but also to be a true wife, and eventually a true mother. By February of 1955, they left Jeju and moved to Chuncheon. I enrolled in Bongui Elementary School and soon entered the 6th grade. On the school grounds stood a big sycamore tree, its circumference greater than I could reach around. I read books under its abundant shade in the hot weather. There was a coal briquette factory next to the school, and my shoes would be covered with black soot when I walked past. Can you imagine our young Mother of Peace reading under that tree? I imagine that the size of the sycamore tree symbolizes the huge scale of her mission. I imagine her shoes to be white, and the black soot symbolic of the dirty world her pure heart would have to walk through in order to accomplish that mission. This young girl was preparing for an epic journey that no woman in history had ever traveled. All the while, their family was still searching for the Lord. Then, God finally responded to her mother's prayers. Mr. Jong suddenly remembered the last dying words of his late mother, Reverend Kim Song-do, the founder of the Holy Lord Church. Let's see what she said, her last dying words. The group to which the Lord is coming will be accused and slandered as a sex cult. Its members will be persecuted and imprisoned. If you hear of such a church, know that it may be the true church, and that you should personally investigate and decide for yourself. So with this in mind, Mr. Jong traveled throughout the country, attending church revival meetings in search of a group that was being persecuted. Then, in May of 1955, he came across an article in the Donga Ilbo, a Seoul newspaper, about 5 Ewha professors, university professors, that were fired due to their association with the Unification Church led by Teacher Moon. That's how Father Moon was called at the time, Teacher Moon. So Mr. Jong felt that it might be the one they were looking for, right? So with the help of his sister, he found the address and visited the Unification Church in Daegu to investigate. He studied the divine principle and was so impressed that he immediately joined. However, he had not yet met Teacher Moon directly. Then, on July 4th, Teacher Moon and several members of the Unification Church were sent to Sodaemun prison in Seoul after being falsely accused. Why? Well, let's read for a moment from Father's autobiography to review it. Ewha, this is Father's autobiography, where you can find a whole nother incredible journey of this man of peace. But let's study about this July 4th incident. Ewha University, which was supported by a Christian foundation in Canada, was worried that they would lose their financial support if it was discovered that a large number of their faculty and students were attending the Unification Church. That was considered heretical, right? So they fired these 5 professors and expelled a whole bunch of students. This caused outrage, and public opinion turned in favor of the Unification Church, which then created an even bigger problem for the university. So let's read what happened. Ewha, in an effort to counter this trend, began a campaign of false rumors too vile to repeat. Unfortunately, as is so often the case, the more vile the rumor, the more people revel in believing and repeating it as true. These false rumors began to feed on themselves, and soon they took on a life of their own. Our church suffered from this for more than a year. So the university had initiated a smear campaign. Meanwhile, Teacher Moon was pleading to the professors and the students in his congregation to lead quiet, simple lives of faith. He wanted the situation to calm down. However, the students were so adamant in their faith, they began to fast. Teacher Moon pleaded again. Listen. It's bad enough that you've been unjustly expelled, I explained. Please do not fast also. If your conscience is clear over what you have done, then being insulted for it is not dishonorable. Do not be discouraged, but wait for your time. You know, this entire situation had a massive negative impact on this fledgling Unification church. And it is right here, that the cult accusation was branded upon them. This incident played a decisive role and was the turning point in gaining me a profoundly negative reputation. Newspaper reports began to read as if all the evil acts committed by various religions were done by us. It hurt to be subjugated to such unfair treatment. The injustice was so intense that it made me angry. I wanted to shout out in rebuttal, but I did not speak out or attempt to fight. We had too much else to accomplish and had no time to waste time in fighting. I believed that such misunderstandings and hatred would dissolve with time and that we should not use our energy to be overly concerned about them. I pretended not to hear people say, "Sun Myung Moon should be struck by lightning," or the Christian ministers who prayed for my death. But instead of dying down, the rumors grew ever more outrageous with each passing day. It felt as if the whole world had united in pointing fingers of accusation at me. Now, rumors had it that I danced naked in our church. I knew better than anyone that it would take time for such misunderstandings to go away. So I never tried to argue with them, saying, "I'm not like that." This incident forced our church to the brink of destruction. The image of pseudo religion or cult became inseparably identified with my name. And all the established churches joined together to call for the government to prosecute me. On July 4th, 1955, the police raided our church and took me and 4 members into custody. Ministers and elders of the established churches joined hands with secular authorities in writing letters calling for our church to be closed. This was the news that alerted Mr. Jong about the Unification Church in the first place. So now he had to find out for himself to see who Teacher Moon really was. Okay, now we've got to go back to Mother's book. Mr. Jong traveled to Seoul to visit Teacher Moon in prison. In that visit, he received inspiration and encouragement. Mr. Jong knew that he had found the one whom Jesus had sent. Some 3 months later, on October 4, Teacher Moon was acquitted of all the charges for which he had been imprisoned. After his release from Sodaemun, Teacher Moon visited Daegu. I was 12 years old, living with my family in Chuncheon, several hours north of Daegu. One morning, my mother told me that she had a dream of cuddling a white dragon in her arms. She did not know what the white dragon symbolized, nor what it meant to cradle it in her arms. But she said that something earth-shaking was about to transpire. That very day, she received a letter from Mr. Jong about his meeting the Divine Principle Movement and about meeting Teacher Moon in prison and who Teacher Moon is, and that Teacher Moon was in Daegu. Is it true? Could it be him? After hearing this, her mother traveled immediately to Daegu to find him, but she could not. So she stayed there and prayed. Can you imagine? Put yourself there. Can you imagine the desperation in her heart? Perhaps the excitement. Remember, Korea is a poor, war-torn country, and our great mother Hong has nothing but her faith in God. Every day, every act, every prayer is offered as her total devotion so that she may be carried by the hands of heaven to find the one that humanity has been waiting for. Please consider how profound her experience was. That night, she prayed desperately again and had another prophetic dream. She saw a pair of golden dragons prostrating themselves in the direction of Seoul. With this vision carved into her heart, she took the train to Seoul the next morning and proceeded to the Unification movement's newly purchased headquarters in Cheongpadong. What was her feeling as she walked up the slope to the church? Don't you think that her heart was beating? Her mind must have been racing? But at the same time, she would have to discover for herself. After 30 years of preparation for this moment, she would know whether he was the one or not. It was early in December 1955. There, she met the teacher of the Unification Church for the first time. The moment she greeted him, she realized that the white dragon in her dream represented none other than him, and that he was the one she had been seeking. She was deeply moved to meet, in her lifetime on earth, the Lord of the Second Advent, for whom she had suffered and sacrificed for 3 decades. Oh man, wow! This is the moment she had been praying for throughout her entire life. This was it. This was it. You know, when you read the final few paragraphs of chapter 2, you'll see that she stayed there at the church with the other members, but Teacher Moon actually singled her out and tested her. Ask yourself, how did he know who she was? How did he know that heaven needed to test her? You know, she stayed there and studied, and everything that she had learned up until that point came together to make total sense. She knew that she had found the Lord of the Second Advent, but she still didn't understand the meaning of the 2 golden dragons. She still had absolutely no idea that the destiny of this man was intertwined with the destiny of her own daughter. Remember, all of the preparation leading up to this point, okay? The thousands of years of Korean history, the incredible preparations in the lineage of this girl, the foundation of Christianity and the missionaries that offered their lives to bring the gospel to Korea, the incredible sacrifices that had to be paved along the way of the providential pathway, such that the only begotten daughter could be born and raised with the highest standard of purity. God entrusted the final chapter of this impossible story into the hands of Great Mother Hong, True Mother's mother, who had sacrificed so much in order to succeed in her search for the Lord. Do you realize how great she is? Do you realize? Thank you. Thank you, Daemonim. Thank you. Thanks to her mother and grandmother, this young girl was just a few short years away from being catapulted into the highest and most noble position in the universe. This young daughter of God was soon to be the bride at the marriage supper of the Lamb. And eventually, she would become the true mother of all mankind, the mother of peace, the mother of heavenly unified Korea, and the mother of heavenly unified world. This is the moment that God and Jesus Christ had been longing to experience. And I'm sure that Jesus was pouring all of his efforts. I'm sure he was pouring out all of his efforts, mobilizing heaven, right, to work in the hearts of all the faithful people that we've been reading about. He was there. This was the pathway of tears that would lead to the Son and Daughter of God to finally meet. This is the story that has been unfolding before our eyes. Isn't it incredible? Yes, it is. Perhaps you couldn't understand it at first. Perhaps you couldn't believe it at first. Well, remember, that's literally the definition of incredible. Look, against all odds, Korea was liberated. Against all odds, the only begotten daughter was born. Against all odds, her family survived through unthinkable challenges, and they found the Lord of the Second Advent. You should know that we are living in the time that history has been waiting for. Do you want to find out what happens next? Then join me for the next episode. In the meantime, as we close chapter 2 and get ready for chapter 3, I bid you a day of joy and happiness. God bless you.